What if I told you there was an American tank unit that the enemy feared, but their own army didn't believe in them? They were African American soldiers fighting in World War II, facing Nazis, freezing forests, and even prejudice at home. This is the story of the 761st Tank Battalion, the Black Panthers, who defied every expectation and changed history forever. Imagine this for a moment. You're a soldier in World War II, preparing to face one of the most feared armies on the planet. You've trained for years. You're ready. But before you ever meet a German tank, you have to fight something else, your own country's belief that you don't belong on the battlefield. Now imagine that despite all of that, your unit becomes so deadly, so relentless, that German soldiers begin whispering a new nickname for you. The Black Panthers, a tank battalion they desperately wanted to avoid. This is the story of the 761st Tank Battalion, an all-African American armored unit that had to earn the right to fight, and then went on to shock both the U.S. Army and the Nazi war machine with one of the most unexpected and heroic breakthroughs of the entire war. A unit that carried two battles at once, one against Hitler's army and one against the prejudice of their own homeland. Their motto was simple: come out fighting. And once they entered combat, they never stopped. Today, we're diving into the real, documented history of the Black Panthers, the tank battalion that fought for their country, fought for respect, and changed American military history forever. To understand why the 761st Tank Battalion was so extraordinary, we need to step back and look at America in the early 1940s, a country fighting for freedom overseas, while still struggling with inequality at home. Back then, the U.S. Army was strictly segregated. African American soldiers could wear the uniform, they could serve the flag, but most were assigned to labor units, supply depots, or construction teams. Combat roles, especially elite roles like tank crews, were considered off-limits. Many senior officers believed, openly and confidently, that black soldiers couldn't handle complex machinery or high-pressure combat decisions. It wasn't a hidden opinion. It was written into training manuals, repeated in meetings, and accepted as policy. And yet, thousands of young African American men still stepped forward. They volunteered. They trained. They pushed through insults, isolation, and unfair rules, not because they expected praise, but because they believed the United States was worth fighting for. Out of that determination, the 761st Tank Battalion was born. They trained at Camp Claiborne and later Camp Hood. And their training was brutal, far harsher than what many white units experienced. But this battalion didn't complain. They knew what was happening. If they made a single mistake, people would say, "See? This is why they shouldn't be here." So they became exceptional. Officers noticed that no matter how many obstacles were placed in front of them, the men of the 761st refused to break. They mastered every drill, every maneuver, every mechanical detail of the M4 Sherman tank. And slowly, a quiet confidence began to build inside the unit. Their shoulder patch, a Black Panther crouched and ready to strike, wasn't chosen by accident. It was a message, a reminder that they were ready, even if the world wasn't ready for them. But there was still one final barrier, no matter how well they trained. Would they ever be allowed to fight? That answer would come from one of the most demanding generals of the entire war, a man who didn't believe in excuses, didn't tolerate weakness, and didn't care for politics. His name was General Patton. For months, the men of the 761st trained without knowing if any of it would matter. They sharpened every skill, memorized every procedure, and pushed themselves past exhaustion. But deep down, many wondered if they would ever leave American soil. Then came October 1944. Message arrived at camp. The 761st Tank Battalion was being assigned to the 3rd Army, commanded by General George S. Patton, the same Patton known for his brutal expectations, his fierce temper, and his belief that only the toughest soldiers deserved a place on the front line. When Patton first inspected the battalion, he didn't hide his skepticism. He looked them in the eyes and said, "I don't care what color you are, as long as you can fight." It wasn't a compliment, it was a challenge. But the men of the 761st understood something powerful. Patton didn't hand out opportunities. He demanded performance. If he was putting them into combat, it meant one thing. He expected them to deliver, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The Allied advance in Europe was slowing. German defenses in France were tightening. Patton needed fresh, aggressive troops to break through enemy lines, and he needed them immediately. So he chose the battalion no one expected him to choose, the one many officers still doubted. As the men loaded their Sherman tanks onto transport ships, something changed. For the first time, they weren't just training to prove they deserved respect. They were going to fight for real. The air was cold and damp as they crossed the English Channel. The sea was rough, and the nights were long. But inside those steel machines, the crews sat quietly, checking their weapons, reviewing maps, and mentally preparing for what would come next. Ahead of them waited France, the front lines, and their baptism of fire. The moment the world would finally see what the Black Panthers were capable of. And once their tracks hit the battlefields of Europe, there was no turning back. When the 761st finally rolled into France, the men didn't have time to settle in. Within hours, they were ordered to the front. No warm-up, no adjustment period. Just straight into the fight. Their first objective was a small French village called Morville-les-Vic, a quiet name on the map, but a deadly piece of ground held by experienced German troops. The area was wrapped in fog and smoke, the roads were narrow, and every farmhouse could hide an anti-tank gun. For the veterans of Patton's army, this was already a tough assignment. For the 761st, it would be their moment of truth. As dawn broke, the Sherman tanks rumbled forward, their engines echoing through the fields. Inside each vehicle, the air was thick with diesel fumes and nerves. Gunners checked their sights again and again. Loaders gripped shells with shaking hands. They all knew everything they had trained for was about to be tested. The first shots came from the tree line. A German anti-tank round screamed past the lead Sherman and exploded in the dirt behind it. The radio crackled with warnings. Enemy armor was nearby. Machine gun fire erupted along the hedgerows. For a moment, just a moment, the entire battalion held its breath. Then came the order, "Black Panthers advance." The response was immediate. The crews of the 761st pushed forward, firing as they moved. The Shermans roared through mud and rubble, smashing through German positions, drawing fire that would have stopped a less determined unit. One tank took a direct hit. Another struck a hidden mine. Smoke filled the sky, and the battlefield erupted into chaos. Yet the battalion didn't slow down. They tightened formation, returned fire with deadly accuracy, and carved open a path for American infantry to push through. For the first time, the enemy saw what these men were made of. German soldiers later reported their shock at how aggressively the unit fought, how they refused to fall back, even under heavy fire. The Black Panthers kept coming, tank after tank, blasting through machine gun nests and destroying armored positions one by one. When the smoke finally cleared, the village was in American hands. The cost was painful. They had lost men. They had lost tanks. But they had also earned something priceless: respect. Word of their performance spread quickly through Patton's 3rd Army. The unit many had dismissed as unfit for combat had just broken through one of the toughest German lines in the region. The 761st wasn't just ready for war. They were built for it. And this was only the beginning. The victory at Morville-les-Vic was only the opening chapter. Ahead of the 761st Tank Battalion stretched one of the hardest assignments of Patton's entire 3rd Army, The Lorraine Campaign, a brutal fight across muddy fields, frozen hills, and fortified German defenses that refused to break. If their first battle proved they deserved to be on the front lines, Lorraine would prove they belonged among the best. Lorraine was a nightmare. The terrain was a maze of flooded rivers, thick forests, and narrow roads perfect for German ambushes. Every rise in the ground seemed to hide a Pak-40 anti-tank gun. Every village was reinforced with machine gun nests and mines. Many American commanders believed pushing tanks through this region was almost impossible, but impossible was exactly where the 761st excelled. Day after day, the Black Panthers fought inch by inch across the countryside. Sherman tanks crawled forward under heavy fire. Mud clung to their tracks so thick it sometimes stopped the vehicles completely. German infantry launched counterattacks from the tree lines, supported by artillery and Panthers hidden in barns and factories. Yet no matter what hit them, rain, snow, artillery, armor, the 761st refused to yield. In town after town, they smashed through German strongpoints that had stalled other American units for weeks. They cleared roads, destroyed roadblocks, and pulled infantry forward with them, acting as the spearhead Patton desperately needed. Officers who once doubted them now requested the 761st by name. Throughout Lorraine, individual acts of heroism became almost routine. Crews rescued wounded infantry under fire. Drivers steered burning tanks out of harm's way to save their crews. Gunners knocked out enemy vehicles from impossible distances. And mechanics worked through icy nights to repair tanks so they could return to battle at dawn. The Germans quickly realized that the unit with the Black Panther emblem wasn't like the others. When these tanks arrived on the horizon, they hit harder, moved faster, and refused to stop. Survivors later described the 761st as fearless, unyielding, and everywhere at once. By late 1944, even Patton, known for his harsh expectations, praised the battalion's performance. Reports from the front described them as aggressive, disciplined, and indispensable to the advance. In less than a month, the 761st had broken through multiple German defensive belts, captured towns that had resisted repeated attacks, opened critical supply routes, and supported some of the toughest infantry units in the European theater. They were no longer just fighting for respect. They were earning a reputation, one battle at a time, as a frontline force the enemy feared, and Lorraine was only the proving ground. Because the biggest test of the war, one that would define the 761st Tank Battalion for generations, was waiting just over the horizon. A massive counteroffensive, a freezing forest, and a desperate German gamble known as the Battle of the Bulge. By December 1944, the 761st had fought for every mile they'd gained in Lorraine. They were exhausted, battered, and running low on men and machines. But just when it seemed like they might finally get a moment to breathe, history took a violent turn. Hitler launched his final, desperate offensive on the Western Front, the Battle of the Bulge. Tens of thousands of German troops surged through the Ardennes forest, smashing American lines, overrunning towns, and threatening to split the Allied armies in half. For the first time since D-Day, the U.S. military was on the defensive. Patton needed reinforcements. He needed speed. He needed a unit that wouldn't break under pressure. So he called the 761st. The conditions were brutal. Snow-buried roads, ice-coated tank tracks. Temperatures dropped so low that fuel lines froze. Even experienced soldiers struggled to move, let alone fight. But the Black Panthers pressed forward. They rolled through blizzards, pushed across slippery roads, and advanced into dense forests where visibility dropped to almost nothing. Inside the Shermans, the steel was so cold it burned the skin. Engines stalled. Radios crackled with static. Every mile felt like a battle of its own. Yet despite all this, the 761st never slowed. Their mission was clear: break through the German attack and reach the American units trapped near Bastogne. Deep in the forest, the battalion encountered enemy forces waiting in ambush. German infantry fired from behind snowy ridges. Anti-tank guns hid under white camouflage nets. Panzer crews waited silently behind pine trees, ready to strike. This was not open terrain. It was a maze of death, but the Black Panthers adapted quickly. Some tanks advanced slowly to draw fire while others flanked enemy positions. Crews coordinated by radio, calling out targets and maneuvering with precision. Machine gun fire echoed between the trees. Shells lit up the dark forest like lightning, bit by bit. The Germans fell back. The same soldiers who were told they weren't capable of combat were now doing the impossible, driving tanks through a frozen forest and beating back one of the most powerful offensives of the war. As the battle intensified, the 761st reached one of the most crucial choke points near the town of Tillet, a key route to Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne Division was surrounded on all sides. If the Germans held Tillet, Bastogne might fall. If Bastogne fell, the entire Ardennes line could collapse. The Black Panthers attacked with everything they had left. Sherman tanks thundered down icy roads, smashing German barricades and clearing house after house in fierce close-quarters fighting. Infantry advanced alongside them, taking shelter behind the tanks as they pushed the enemy back inch by inch. At one point, a German Panther tank opened fire at close range, knocking out a leading Sherman. Instead of retreating, a Black Panther crew maneuvered around the burning wreck and took out the Panther with a perfectly placed shot. Moments like this shifted the battle. Finally, after hours of brutal fighting, the Germans retreated and the road to Bastogne was open, thanks to units like the 761st. The 101st Airborne held their ground long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The tide of the Battle of the Bulge began to turn. By early January, the offensive that was meant to destroy the Allied front had been stopped, and the 761st Tank Battalion played a critical role in closing the gap, breaking German lines and saving surrounded American forces. They had gone from a unit many officers doubted to a battalion Patton depended on when the war was at its darkest. The Black Panthers had done more than fight through snow, armor, and enemy fire. They shattered expectations. They proved they were one of the most effective tank units in the European theater. And yet, despite their extraordinary achievements, the battle for recognition was far from over. When the guns finally fell silent in Europe, the men of the 761st Tank Battalion had fought for 183 consecutive days, longer than nearly any other armored unit in the U.S. Army. They had broken German lines, liberated towns, rescued surrounded American forces, and helped stop Hitler's last major offensive. Their record was undeniable. Thousands of enemy soldiers captured, dozens of tanks and anti-tank guns destroyed key supply routes, secured multiple Allied divisions saved from collapse. They had done everything asked of them, and far more. But when these men returned home, their welcome was not parades, medals, or speeches. Instead, they returned to a country still struggling with segregation. A country where their uniforms earned them respect overseas, but not always in their own hometowns. A country where many veterans of the 761st had to fight once again, not on battlefields, but in everyday life, for the dignity they had already earned in Europe. Despite their achievements, the 761st received no major recognition immediately after the war. Their heroism was mentioned in reports, admired by commanders, and acknowledged by fellow soldiers, but rarely spoken about publicly. For decades, their story lived mostly in memories and whispered conversations among veterans. It seemed as if history, the very history they helped shape, had moved on without them. But the truth has a way of resurfacing in the years that followed. Historians, veterans groups, and surviving members of the battalion began to share their experiences. They spoke of the courage in Lorraine, the cold terror of the Ardennes, and the relentless drive that carried them from France to Belgium to Germany. Slowly, the world started to understand just how extraordinary the Black Panthers had been. And in 1997, more than 50 years after their tanks first rolled into combat, the United States finally awarded the 761st Tank Battalion the Presidential Unit Citation, one of the nation's highest honors for collective bravery. It was long overdue, but it was deserved. The men of the 761st didn't fight for medals. They didn't fight for fame. They fought because they believed in a future where their courage would finally be seen and remembered. Today, when historians look back on World War II, the story of the 761st Tank Battalion stands out not just because of what they accomplished on the battlefield, but because of what they overcame to get there. These were men who volunteered for a country that didn't always stand with them. Men who trained twice as hard because a single mistake could be used against them. Men who fought 2 wars at once, one against Nazi Germany and one against the limits society tried to place on them. And yet, when their moment came, they didn't hesitate. They pushed through France, smashed through Lorraine, and charged straight into the frozen chaos of the Battle of the Bulge. They saved American lives, opened critical supply routes, and helped bring the war in Europe to an end. Their motto, "Come out fighting," wasn't just a slogan. It was who they were. The legacy of the Black Panthers can still be felt today in every integrated unit of the U.S. military. In every soldier who serves based on ability, not skin color. And in every story that reminds us that courage doesn't belong to one group or one era. Courage belongs to those who choose to stand up, even when the world tells them to sit down. The 761st Tank Battalion didn't just change the course of battles. They helped change the course of American history. And now, decades later, their story is finally being told, honored, and remembered, because heroes like these should never be forgotten.